Mobility, construction, heating, food. In the future, nothing will remain unaffected as long as people truly want to solve the problem. The scientific evidence is clear. The climate of the planet Earth will continue to warm. To what extent are humans the cause of warming? And to what extent is it a natural process? What form will the consequences of climate change assume, regionally and globally? Overwhelming floods and storms, droughts and forest fires are only some of the disastrous repercussions of climate change that in the future will exert an even greater impact on the economic, social and cultural relations already known to us. Can we respond, and how? The Goethe-Institute in Croatia invited scientists and representatives of the political scene and the cultural stage
on the topic of culture and climate
to Zagreb's popular mountain recreational and leisure spot, Medvednica, so that they could come together amidst the greenery of this nature park at an elevation of 1,000 meters and attempt to grapple with the phenomenon of climate change from a diversity of perspectives.
This is a very interesting meeting here at the Goethe-Institute, and a lot of people that usually I don't meet all the time, from all kinds of sciences, from all kinds of political organization. Very interesting, very interdisciplinary, and I think exactly the kind of input that we need for future climate research and for creating the networks to get the message of climate change going, not only in science, but beyond science.
It is not only in Croatia that economic development and modernization often proceed to the detriment of nature and the environment. This is, among other things, reflected in the uncontrolled growth of cities. The time at the disposal of economic and political decision makers is very limited, so the long-term consequences of climate change are often overlooked. It is high time to make adjustments, but Croatia lacks a clear strategy, to say nothing of an organized network of accountable instances, and this includes the field of architecture.
Every picture is 1,000 words, so please look at this density. So what is the idea of such a quality living, you see? First, second, third row and so on. So everything is more or less under control. Garbage, fire protection. So we are listening about sustainability criteria. We are resetting them. More or less, we are waiting on entrance in the European Union. In this moment, from the next morning, we should have the same culture or behavior.
Last year, Germany made public its strategy for adaptation to climate change, on which basis, in cooperation with the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, they've devised a project to investigate the possibilities of adapting nature protection to climate change. How was the example of the city of Zagreb used in the attempt to solve local developmental and environmental problems?
There is quite a long tradition in the city in planning Medvednica mountain as a park of nature, going back in early 70s, because at that time there wasn't such a pressure of investors and policy on planning. We started working on the new plan in 2002, finished the version in 2003, but then for some reasons the plan was stopped. Then again we started working on it in 2005 and finished the proposal of it, and it really went to the public hearing and got relatively good responses. But then discussion started about changing of boundaries. And if you have a plan, it should cover the whole area as a park of nature. It's not possible that it goes further. Speaking of goals of the plan, it's really a plan that we hope will protect Medvednica for the future. It doesn't allow big investments, it doesn't allow big interventions. It just tries to keep it not as it is, but to improve what needs to be improved, speaking of its ecological, cultural, recreational opportunities and functions, which are really the most important for the park. So we hope that it will go to the public hearing and that all of you will have the opportunity to say your opinion and that we will tailor some kind of best possible plan for the mountain.
Granice parka povučene su 1981. godine, dakle gotovo prije 30 godina, a javna ustanova koja se brine o ovom području osnovana je 1998. godine da bi 2000. počela raditi i kadrovski se ekipirati. Ono što je dakle tu činjenica da je u tih 20 godina puno stvari se dogodilo dakle na ovim prostorima i jednostavno su nažalost neki od tih prostora su izgubili obilježja parka prirode, zašto su i tada bili i proglašeni zaštićenim dijelom prirode. Mi smo imali čak i na zagorskoj strani koja je puno manje pod pritiskom svekolikih interesa, slučaj da smo na jednom malom prostoru, konkretno u Bistri, imali na svega 2 hektara smještenu i benzinsku crpku, i plinsku stanicu, i reciklažu plastike i prikupljanje starih automobilskih guma. Koliko je tome mjesto u parku prirode, mislim da svako najbolje zna sam. U današnje vrijeme, bez obzira na svu situaciju, ipak ovo je mjesto postalo destinacija zadovoljavanja ljudskih, kulturnih, sportsko-rekreacijskih i zdravstvenih potreba. Ali smo isto tako svjedoci da to je jedan rastući trend, da svakodnevno sve više raznih interesnih grupa, dakle skupina ljudi ovdje dolazi da bi zadovoljila svoje potrebe.
As a traditional place for outings and socializing by Zagreb's natives, Medvednica and its 22,816 hectares of greenery are increasingly threatened by various interests and aspects of use, whether excessive development, unsuitable traffic planning, or large-scale sports events like the World Cup ski race or automobile rally racing. The tension between environmental protection, urban planning, tourism and the economy is increasing. It can only be assumed that climate change will further intensify existing problems.
In the nature park of Medvednica, every year there's a car rally. So, I'm afraid to say, but the city of Zagreb and the Ministry of Culture, which is responsible for nature protection in Croatia, give a license every year for INA, which is the biggest oil company in Croatia, Delta, car rally within the Park of Nature, and the second one in Žumberak, which is also a Park of Nature. So from all the sites in Croatia for autocar rally, we have the one which is the biggest one in 2 nature parks in Croatia. What's our role as civil society? We try to put the eye of the public on this problem, because when this proposal was being passed in the city assembly, we tried to do some actions, some media activity, some press conference to make it interesting and easy for people to understand why this is the problem. The second thing is the energy policy, and we are right now in the time when Croatian Parliament is going to adopt a new energy strategy. I can tell you more about the energy and intensivity of Croatia, which is basically twice bigger than the European Union, which means that for every unit of BDP, we actually consume twice more energy than EU average. So our energy efficiency is really, really bad.
Okay, so just maybe a few words about just UNDP and what we are doing in regard to climate change. So we have 2 big projects, and one is more focused on biodiversity, but it's mainly also related to climate change, because we are trying to green economic sector and to introduce good practices within businesses to do more organic agriculture. It's a way as well for doing mitigation to climate change. The other big project is the energy efficiency project, which is dealing with the introduction of energy efficiency measures in public sector. And Vlado is also representing here the project. So Vlado will tell you more if you have questions more related on the project and what they are doing.
Diminishing resources, rising sea levels, and more frequently flooded basements and city streets caused by unusually forceful storms, or a growth in the number of pests and new diseases, are plausible future outcomes for Croatia as well, where according to the latest UNDP research, climate change may exert an especially negative impact on the water supply, public health and tourism.
So, considering tourism for Croatia, that is a very special and very important sector. You have to know that 18% and some years close to 20% of national GDP is coming from the tourism sector. So if anything happens to tourism, that will have very bad consequences to Croatian economy. Obviously, we cannot build a wall to protect the coast, but what we at least can do now, and that's one of those no-regret measures, is include those climate variabilities or projected climate changes into the development plans. And the problem is that in Croatia we don't really have coastal zone management as such, and here in Croatia we don't have a body. There was a try to such a body to be organized within the Ministry of Environment, but basically, and it exists on the paper, but there is no one actually employed in there. We can have introduction of new diseases. Why? Because our continental climate or this Mediterranean climate can become subtropic maybe. So what will we see? Will we see some so-called vector-borne diseases such as malaria, dengue fever that are spread by mosquitoes? Because such new species will come into the area, and that is already seen in the fisheries, because some new fish species, some new plant species, algae are coming into the area and taking the natural habitats of the local species.
In its most recent report, released in 2007, the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, stresses that extreme climate change is threatening the world's entire population, necessitating a change in thinking and the consideration of new risks. One example being the field of insurance.
And that's one of the chances we also have to talk about, cooperation between science, and not only politicians, scientists and politicians, but other groups that may help or be very helpful in adapting to changing risks. Insurance companies are very interesting in this context, you know. If we could do something like a public-private connection. As researchers, most of us are paid by public institutions, so we and lose our being afraid of, well, somehow serving private companies' purposes. I think this is a chance for cooperation.
In Croatia, under leadership of Ministry for Environmental Protection and Spatial Planning, were very good cooperation between scientists and all politicians and decision makers who participated in first and other national communications to UNFCCC about research and measures for GHG concentration decrease, mitigation and adaptation to future climate change. Meteorological and hydrological service translated on Croatian language all parts of IPCC fourth assessment report and delivered it to all scientific institutions, public relations, policy makers and others. All what you work depend of the data, because the theory is one thing, but the data are very important in future research.
Thanks to scientists and the figures and charts in their reports, the debate on climate change has progressed significantly. Climate data and this challenge of clarity and inspiration presented as graphic displays and clear facts prompt purposeful action now has to be taken up by artists and other cultural creators.
It's so difficult to communicate what you are actually talking about. And I've been in many conferences together with natural scientists, and I admire the research that they do. But the idea that many natural scientists have is, oh, we provide the knowledge, here's the knowledge, we tell you what you have to do, reduce emissions, etc. And now there are the politicians who are going to do this. That's not the way it works. Because politicians just can't focus simply on climate issues alone, have no very clear idea about the scientific evidence, because politicians are under pressure from interest groups, from other side, from the other side, etc., etc., etc. So beware of the communication. To speak a certain language, try to speak a language that everybody can understand. That means sometimes that you have to reduce complexity in what you tell the people.
In that sense, what about education projects?
Yes, education projects is one of the very concrete things, or for architecture, for example. Instead of using law, often people want to use law law as a means to forbid people to use certain materials for house construction, etc. I think that's not always the way to do it. Education is one chance here, because it's very easy to reach all the architects. Every architect has to go through university education. So it's very easy, it's centralized to include climate knowledge within the subject of architecture. But that means we have to think over the differentiation of the different scientists. Today, in many universities, what emerges is something like climate studies programs.
Climate policy entails recommendations, rules and bans, major technological projects and prevention of climatic disasters. But there is also a pressing need for the ideas, innovation, intriguing projects and experiments appearing with greater frequency in urban planning, architecture, design and the arts. So changes in our everyday awareness and a re-examination of the sustainability of our current way of life in the future are essential.
By bringing different stakeholders to the same table, from business sector, from NGOs, civil society and media, with other sector mostly active in the field of culture. We think that this communications is important, and that the culture sector can also help and contribute to deliver the message on impacts of climate change to Croatia and to the region. Of course, there are many different impacts of climate change, and maybe the adaptation strategy and the adaptation policies in Croatia can be addressed in more innovative way, in more participative way, and in this sense I see that partnership between Goethe-Instituts and Stiftung can be fruitful in the forthcoming period.
The principal task is to adapt to climate change today so that the economic and social consequences do not catch us off guard tomorrow. Different communities, however, will have to bear climate change in different ways due to their diverse economic and historical traditions and trajectories. Artists must also broaden perspectives, question explanations and facts, pose political, scientific and technical questions, and offer new creative responses. Discussions of climate change cannot be bypassed by culture and the arts. cultural activists and artists employ a diversity of visions and forms to better present the complexity and dynamics of the climate and analyse the deep social processes tied to climate change. In order to sharpen our perceptions and highlight alternative perspectives, weather and disaster scenarios are being simulated, and different modes of portrayal and staging are being explored. This point of contact between science and art creates the interdisciplinary collaboration so essential to successfully and critically confronting climate change and its consequences. Images and facts become a narrative which will, we hope, open significant avenues for contemplating underlying causes and indispensable joint action in the future.